This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
We all know that the fear of planning for retirement is running out of money. I mean, that would be the worst thing that could happen to you, right? Well, there was a recent survey that asked a couple of folks, how often do you withdraw from your retirement accounts? 52% answered only when needed, right? Only when I have to. Another 30% said never, and just 16% said systematically or regularly. So those are very, very small numbers there. 16% says regularly. That goes right to your point where you have to literally teach people it's okay to spend your money.
I had an experience a few years ago with a woman who came to one of our adult education classes down at the college. She was retired, and she lived with her son who had never married. And she had some concerns about taking care of him, but the truth was she had a few million. She was totally fine. And so we actually had this conversation, how she said she really wanted to go spend time with her extended family in Greece, but she couldn't quite bring herself to do that. And so I actually created a structured payment plan that would deliver checks to her mailbox every month for the rest of her life. She couldn't outlive them. And my whole point to her was, look, if this check is coming to you every month and you know it's coming, you might as well spend it because it's just going to otherwise accumulate. Mm-hmm. Well, long story short, that was the key to her having the experiences that she professed to want to have. She ended up not doing it because she couldn't bring herself to spend. I've often thought of her because her son's not going to have any problem spending her money, and he will have the experiences that she deprived herself of. So we can actually create structured plans for people to help them spend, to encourage them to live up to their privileges, as I often say. And if people have not thought about this, would encourage them to come in and talk to us because we can show you how to do this, to actually kind of retrain yourself to actually go live the life that you want to live. Because again, if it's like a pension where you have money coming in every month and you know it's going to keep happening, it's never going to run out, well then why not spend it?
Sure.
That's the whole purpose of the money, right? Is to create the experiences. So go to lunch. I mean, I can't tell you how many widowed clients I work with who sometimes struggle to go to lunch with their girlfriends because they just feel like they can't afford to. You've got the money, but you won't let yourself enjoy the people that you love the most.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it all comes down to that mental game, right? Again, you've been taught save, right? Hold it close to your chest. Don't let anybody near it. And now all of a sudden the floodgates open. And Mark, after you put together like these structured plans you're talking about, and you've created this mailbox money, this income that's coming in every single month, and you're saying, no, guys, it's really okay. You can go to lunch 3 times a week if you want. You can go get your nails done, and you can go to the beach 4 times a year, whatever it is. I mean, you're creating, these plans, and it's really hard for folks to take that mental and that emotional part out of it because, listen, that's your life savings. That's everything you've worked so hard for. So I completely understand that transition part of, taking a little bit, loosening the belt a little bit, wanting to spend some more, knowing it's okay to spend. And I think that's part of the conversation as well, Mark. I mean, again, you've been doing this for 3 decades. I think, it comes down to the mental and emotional part of it, but also that transitional period from that structure of the 9 to 5 and being needed and wanted and people needing your opinion and you're important. And then all of a sudden you go into retirement and things change, right? You don't have that structure. You don't have the meetings every day and you don't have people blowing you up, asking you questions. Then you go through a mental state of, well, am I important? What can I do? I mean, it really is an emotional psychology if you think about it.
Absolutely it is. And I talk about this in my classes. I do this 6-hour class at the college we teach. And in the first 15 minutes, I talk about actually how traumatic it can be for many people, particularly for men. And I also talk about the rise of gray divorce because so commonly we see couples who actually split up as they enter retirement because, number one, they're getting more time together again after all those decades, and they're sometimes not so thrilled with the fact. But the other is simply that they're going through these changes. And I think of a couple, literally last week, I sat down with a gentleman, and he was telling me that he and his spouse were actually divorcing now after all these years. They've been working with me for about a year. And I reminded him how we had talked about this in the class he had attended. And for so many people, it just seems unrealistic. That's just other people kind of thing. But it's not. It's not. We all go through the very emotions that you just described so well there. It
Sure.
can be traumatic, and we have to be prepared. We have to have sounding boards. More than anything, we have to start communicating again at levels we haven't, not only with our advisor, but also with the people we love most, our spouses.
Now, kind of back to the planning conversation. Let's say you've set your retirement date, right? You feel great about it. It's all good. But is it realistic? A recent survey says that 40% of us end up retiring before that planned date. Morningstar's Christine Benz recommends coming up with a plan B.
People tend to overestimate how long they'll be able to work. In general, we see a little bit of a disconnect where you've got people retiring in the 60 to 65 year range who maybe had planned to stick it out even past age 70. So you should build in a contingency plan. Maybe your best guess is that you'll retire at age 68 or 70 or whenever it may be, but build in some kind of buffer. What would you do if you needed to or wanted to retire a bit earlier?
I mean, these are some good talking points here. Mark, when it comes down to creating a retirement plan, do you build that what if scenario, that plan B?
Well, absolutely. That's something we discuss. And to the degree we actually build it out really depends upon the client. But it absolutely has to be a conversation, because the truth is that we don't always retire on our own timeline. A large percentage, I don't know the exact statistic, but a large percentage of Americans retire earlier than expected due to circumstances entirely beyond their control. It may be economic downsizing of the workforce, or it may be health problems. I mean, we've certainly dealt with that. Literally this last weekend, I had this conversation with my wife where I said, we've got to get on the same page regarding the 5-year plan that's in my head, because it's hard even for me and my wife to discuss, But the truth is we've had some health challenges, and, she has multiple sclerosis. I've been dealing with long COVID for a few years. We've become very aware of our mortality, and the reality is we've got to be on the same page. I know where the money's at. I know how things will go, but she doesn't particularly. And so we've got to really be on the same place there. So yes, this is something we discuss with clients. Many people retire earlier than expected, which means they have to make adjustments to their expectations, or at least they should. The scary thing is when they don't adjust their expectations. They had planned on working to 67, they jump out at 62 for whatever reason, and they're spending as if they had those extra 5 years of savings when they didn't. And so I can definitely think there's horror stories there with clients who, or people with, we've tried to help prepare who just insisted, due to circumstances or desire, on leaving earlier. It's easier to get out of the workforce than it is to get back in. And so we do have to have plan A and B, as it were, because again, life rarely happens according to each of our individual timelines and goals. I love that old Jewish proverb that says, if you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly been how my life's gone, is differently than expected. So yes, we have that conversation with clients. And for people who haven't thought through that, we would encourage them to come in and talk to us about risk, because retirement planning really is more about risk management than anything else. It's not about who can get you the sexiest return. Unfortunately, that's the conversation far too many people have. They go into a financial advisor, and one of their first questions to me is, what rate of return can you get me? Well, I know if that's the first question, this is not a good fit, as a client, because the bigger issue should be, what's going to happen if my health changes and suddenly I have to hire caregivers because I'm twice the size of my wife and she can't lift me out of the bathtub. Mm-hmm. There's issues like that can become very costly and that can blow through couples' finances and often leave the surviving spouse with far too little, typically for her, because it's usually the woman, frankly, that outlives the guy. 3/4 of women actually enter retirement single, and that's either by choice or by circumstances. And so when I talk about those things, again, I'm not trying to sound sexist. It's just looking at the clear statistics. Mm-hmm. There are issues there, and people really need to talk about risk, because the risks are what blow a person's plan up.
Investment advisory service is offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. conditions. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and/or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.